How's everybody?
Good,
Well.
how are you?
All right. Open houses last night went off without a hitch from
I think
everything
so.
I heard.
Everything I heard, I think it was pretty good, pretty calm. Ready to go tomorrow. Ready or not, here they come.
Ready or not, here we
That's
go.
right.
All right. Dora, did you have any additions or subtractions to make to the minutes?
I was just looking over the minutes from 27, from
From last year? I mean,
last time.
last time.
Feels like I've been a year already.
I did not have any changes.
We did talk about dress code last time. I don't see that on here. Didn't we talk about dress code last time?
I don't recall if it was there or in another forum. So,
Yeah, I was going back to see it. We had it on April 22nd, we talked about it.
I thought I brought it up again this time too. Maybe I didn't, but I thought I did. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm looking at the minutes from April, you had a whole paragraph on the page, so they all start to go together after a while.
they do. And we may have talked about it as we reviewed the minutes,
Yeah.
as opposed to a new discussion.
Yeah, I know we had a lengthy discussion in April because Mr. Tucker was here. Last time it was just Mr. DePere and I and Dr. Trosper. We had a smaller group, so.
There certainly wasn't any action taken on it.
It's fine.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from May 27th.
I make a motion.
As they
to
stand.
approve it.
All right. Aye, aye. So the minutes are approved. Ms. Jennings, you got something for us today.
I do. So good afternoon. You have been provided with the Bedford County Public Schools Special Education Performance Report. It should be in your packet. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires each state to report to the public on state-level data and individual school division-level data, and to report on whether the state and the divisions met those state targets described in the state's state performance annual plan. The report compares the division's performance to the state target. You'll see on the top of the report, it says federal fiscal year 2023. This is because these reports are always a year behind. So the indicator information that is provided to you today is according to the 22-23 school year for a couple indicators, which I'll let you know which those are, as well as the 23-24 school year. So data is always a year behind when we're looking at this. There's 14 indicators, 6, 7, and 12 are early childhood special education indicators, and all others are school age performance indicators. So let's start with number 1. Indicator 1 is graduation. This indicator measures students with disabilities who graduate with a standard or an advanced diploma. It does not include students with disabilities who graduated with an applied studies diploma. So if you remember, there's 3 diplomas that our students can graduate with, and that's applied studies, and that's through their IEP, standard or advanced. So when we're looking at this, the information is from the 22-23 school year. So this is one of those that is even further behind than just the 23-24 school year. As you can see, that we did not meet the state standard, but I will let you know that we increased last year, so we're seeing that progression upwards as we move forward. And we've also, with the use of credit accommodations and other things provided by the state to support our students, we're going to see that number continue to rise. Indicator, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, so just so I'm reading this chart correctly, the 57.58 is what we accomplished? If that's what we got?
On the 22-23 school year.
On the 22-23, and then the 72.24, is that
That's the state target.
the target? Okay.
Mhm. And that state target, just so you guys know, state target on indicator is slowly going up every year because their goal is to put it at 100%. So that state target is always moving as we're trying to reach it as well. I will tell you, last year it was 51.32%, so we did gain 6% and more in points, moving toward the goal that we want to. And we're definitely working on that graduation. And remember, this is standard and advanced.
How does that compare to other districts around us? Because that doesn't really give me an idea of.
Yeah, I do look and compare to our other districts, and for many of those that are about the same size, we're either doing better or about the same.
You mean like Campbell County and Amherst and?
Well, Amherst is smaller than we are, so I really don't compare because you're looking at 500 student compared to over 1,000. But when you look at Lynchburg City, Campbell County, Roanoke City, those schools that are comparative in size.
Thank you.
Indicator 2 is dropouts. As you can see, this measures the students that dropped out. So if you remember, students in special education can be in school until they're 22 or until they get their standard diploma. So we have some students that drop out before that time. So that percentage went up this year that we're not really happy with. It was much lower. We met the standard last year. We met the state target last year, but not this year. So that's something we're looking very closely at and starting to work. And really working with our students on staying in school and what jobs do they want and working on job skills so they know the importance of school and why to stay in school.
Did other schools see a rise in dropout rate as well with COVID and all the absenteeism that skyrocketed and things you want to?
I've looked at other schools, some, one in particular that I looked at, I think was Roanoke City and Lynchburg City. It was much higher than ours is. But I think with dropouts, you see an ebb and flow.
There's a bug down there.
Oh. Okay.
Do you want him crawling on your foot?
Step on it, we won't, we won't
Sorry, it
fuss.
was a little distracting to me.
Thank you for letting me know. I'd rather that not follow me in the stream in the middle of this. You kind of see an ebb and flow. Like I said, last year we met the state target, and this year we're seeing that higher percentage. So we start looking into that, and we talk to teachers. Erica Rogers is our supervisor for high school, and she works very closely with STARS and community and our schools and making sure that we're keeping kids in school and we're providing them those transition plans.
So we,
this 9.09 is 2022.
2022,
Is there any-
2023.
Maybe you said, and I couldn't hear you, is there any indication of 23, 24?
Not yet.
Okay.
We'll get that next year.
so what was it before that, when we did meet?
Let me see if I wrote that down. I'll have to pull it up from last time, but I can pull up last year's. I'm thinking it was around 4 or 5%, but I'd have to look to make sure.
I can also add, just as a high school principal, we work specifically on this one. It can be a little bit deceiving in that this rate just applies to that graduating cohort, that group. So you could have a senior class that one year has 11 students with a disability in it, and next year the next senior class might have 27 students with a disability. And so 1 to 2 students could make a massive percentage difference, when in
Correct.
reality, we had 3 this year and 3 the next year, but this was 3 from a group of 30, this was 3 from a group of 12. So I know I saw my rate change drastically each year, and it was typically about the same number of kids. It was the size of the students with disabilities in that group.
So then the question then is, the 9.09, how many total kids were there in that program?
And I would have to look back at that number in 22, 23.
Is that something you can just email us?
I'll have to see if I can get it or not, get that information, and I'll let you know. That's okay.
A lot of the data, it kind of aggregates from our systems into percentages. So it's not like Kelly's putting in like individual students aggregating out of Power Schools, so.
And sometimes the data that's put in too from Power School isn't translated correctly to BDOE. So sometimes their percentages are off as well. We're finding that. If they're coded differently in Power School and how that's looked at. So those are things that we're constantly looking at and trying to make sure we have correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so indicator 3, as you can see, is in 3 parts. 4 parts, I'm sorry, let me look, 4 parts. The first one, 3A, is that participation rate, and this is how many of our students are actually participating in the SOLs. They only look at that 4th grade, 8th grade, and high school, as you can see. And this is, are they participating in the SOLs, and that's for reading and for math. So both 3As at the top, the first one's reading, the second one's for math. As you can see, elementary and middle school, everyone's participating. High school, again, as Mr. Tucker also said, it's one of those that sometimes the kids are participating in and sometimes they're not, and sometimes they don't have to. So say a kid with a disability took geometry, they already passed their algebra SOL, they don't have to take their geometry SOL, and so they may not. So they may not participate in that because they don't need it. They already have the verified credit. So that's why you will see in high school, you'll see those rates a little bit lower for participation, because it's not necessarily that they have to participate in that actual.
So do all high school students have to, I'm sorry, so I know it's Algebra 1 and 2, because I know my son had to do SOLs for both of those, but do all high school students not have to do geometry?
So SOLs are provided in the credit for all of those classes, and I'm sure Dr. Trosper can answer this question better. But with our students with disabilities, because they only need the 5 verified credits, and yes, our students without disabilities only need 5 as well, they generally, if they don't have to take that SOL, they won't take that SOL because that's added pressure.
Yeah, they're required to take their 9th grade math class, the SOL for that, so that could be algebra, geometry.
Oh, I see.
And then they have to take biology, so it might be 10th grade, it might be 9th grade. But, yeah, so it's freshman math and biology they're required to.
And so, and even in reading, some of our students may not do the 11th grade in a credit, they may do it in 12th grade when they do that. So that's why you'll see those numbers. But we are working for all of our students to participate to get that verified credit. So the next one, 3B, is that proficiency rate. So how did they do on the SOLs? Did they meet the state target? And you can see 3B for reading and math in all 3 areas, we did meet the state target. This is all, it's not as high as I would like it. We're always increasing, but we continue to want to increase and do even better than what the state target is. So right now we are meeting state target. And I had other directors in other counties reaching out saying, how are we doing this? You know, what does that look like for us? Because they're not. And so I'm very proud that we are, but again, it's always our expectation to continue to grow and to improve.
Excellent.
So 3C is that proficiency rate for children for VAP. So these are the students that are in alternative assessments. They don't take SOLs. VAP has become increasingly harder. They've put that on the computer now. It's no longer a collection of evidence in a notebook. Students are on the computer. They've also put more rigid qualifications for a child to be in VAP. So therefore, our students who truly have extensive needs. And there's a reason they can't participate in the gen ed curriculum. But you can see here that we met the state target for VAP in reading for 4th grade, but we did meet it. For 8th and high school, we are at 72%. So we'd like to see that percentage go up. So that's there, and as well, at the bottom, we were able to do it for 4th in high school, but not for middle school. So we'll continue to work on those as well.
We're pretty close though in 8th
Yeah.
grade.
Yeah.
High school, maybe not so much.
Yeah, middle school was very close for reading. As you can see, 72.73, and the state target was 72.5.
I know, you just,
That's up,
yeah, very close.
Yeah. So those are things that we'll continue to work with our teachers, work with our students, and making sure we're understanding those ESOLs. And then 3D is just kind of that gap, and what you want to see with this number is for this number to get smaller and smaller. So this is more of a decrease, not an increase that you want to see. So we want that gap between our students without disabilities and our students with disabilities to be smaller, and they have our state target here. So on their proficiency rate, that's where we are with the gap of meeting the state target.
You're
Some are
close.
really close as
Yeah,
well.
close, in
Yeah.
eighth grade.
And we'll continue to, I think it's, as we continue to see that proficiency rate rise in 3B, you're going to see this get smaller in 3D. So that's the goal when we look at that.
So the fourth graders seem to be doing well in this study, so they would be sixth graders now, seventh graders?
Yes, they will be, the 23, 24, yeah, so they should be close to middle school this coming year. And then, of course, when standards change, we always have all of that goes on. So indicator 4 is our suspension rate of our students. It's if we suspend students with disabilities greater than 10 days in a school year compared to their same age peers or their general education peers, we were found to have a discrepancy with our students with disabilities against their same age peers. So I know they don't put the state target here, but they want you at 2.0% or less. We were at 4.72%. And we were found discrepancy with 3.92% for students who are white. So we were found in that area, but we were not found that we weren't doing the things that we need to be doing. So for this indicator, we tell them all the things that we're doing with discipline and how we're working together. And I work closely with Mr. Tucker and Dr. Trosper and their teams as we look at that discipline and suspension and alternatives to suspension and keeping them in school. So this is something we're always working on with those positive behavioral supports and looking at that discrepancy. Indicator 5 is the least restrictive environment for our school-age students. So when a student is found to have a disability and they have an IEP, we have to make sure they're in their least restrictive environment. So we want them included in the regular classroom in which we are meeting that state target, that they're included in regular classroom 80% or more of the day. As you can see, students in a regular classroom less than 40%, we don't want that high, we want that lower. So you can see we did not meet that, but we're right there. So we're really working with keeping our students in the general education curriculum, keeping them in the classrooms and making sure they're getting the same instruction as all of our students, as well as their specially designed instruction. 5C are students served in a public or private school. So these are students that we would write IEPs for them to be in an outside placement. We didn't meet state target, but I can tell you with confidence that we had the lowest rate of students in private placements in the surrounding districts. And that would include Amherst, Appomattox, Lynchburg, Roanoke, Campbell, all of those school systems. We do have the lowest number in private day. We work very hard with keeping our kids here, providing behavioral supports that they need to make sure that they're in their community school and with their peers. Indicator 6 is your preschool outcomes, and so this is your preschool environments. As you can see, we met all of that. We want to make sure our kids have good role models. We know it starts early when we're looking at our students and growing them. So our students with disabilities, we want them included with their peers and participating with their peers to give them that start. We have met all of the state target on those. We don't have them enrolled outside of programs. We have them inside of our programs, and we do really well with this. And I'm very proud of this indicator as well. Preschool outcomes when children come into us and are found eligible for special education. There's a chart we have to fill out for indicator 7, and we state where they are when they come in, if they're below age expectations, and then where they're leading us. So they come to us when they're 3, they're going to kindergarten when they're 5, and we have another chart that rates. They came in at a 4, they're leaving us at a 7, and that's what we want to see. As you can see, we are doing that with their social emotional skills. And then when we're looking at communication as well as behavior, we're not quite meeting the state target when they're exiting. But we're working on our Streaming 3 curriculum as well as our conscious discipline. We work very hard with our students and growing our students so that they will be meeting these outcomes. So that is our goal, and we're constantly moving toward that state target and above. All right, parent involvement is indicator 8. And this is where it's a survey parents fill out. And really, this is one of those that it's how many parents fill it out. And that's where the percentage comes from. Last year, we were over 80% that they reported to us for the 22-23 school year. This year, we had 69%. we give this to them at every meeting. So every meeting, they get a paper that has the QR code, and all they have to do is click their phone on it. It's like 2 questions. We ask them to fill it out, we beg them to fill it out, and we still encourage parents to fill that out. And that percentage goes up when parents are filling that out. So a little less control over that. Indicator 9 and 10 is if we are finding students and we're disproportionate in our eligibility and services. So we weren't found for 23-24 school year, either one of those. We were found that we are doing eligibility right, if you want to say. We're not finding a certain race or ethnicity group we're not overly finding them for a certain disability care category. So that just means that when we do our eligibilities, we're following the protocols, we're following the DOE criteria. So we were found in compliance there. As well as indicator 11, we have a timeline for eligibility. Under IDEA, once we suspect a disability of a child, we have 65 days to do those assessments and do the eligibility. The expectation is for us to do that at 100% because that's required through IDEA. You can see there that we are meeting our timelines and we're in compliance. And for indicator 12, again, that's a preschool. They come from us from Part C, which is infant toddler. Are we doing the eligibility and having their IEP before they turn 3 so they can come into school age preschool? And you can see that we're doing that as well. That's 100%. Indicator 13 and 14 are the last two. Indicator 13 is secondary IEP goals and transition services. Are we writing our IEPs and providing that for our students, making sure they have a transition plan, and we are doing that at 100%. And then indicator 4 is post-secondary outcomes. So this is one that a year after students graduate with disabilities, we try to call them. So we have our case managers, our social workers, all of us are trying to call parents, call children and see where they are and what they're doing. This can be very difficult, finding a lot to be able to do that and get the answers, and looking to see, are they enrolled in higher education? Do they have a job? Are they in the military? All of those things. And so we're moving toward that. We want to see this improve tremendously, but we have not met that state target for post-secondary outcomes. But we're working very hard with communities, with DARS, as well as in our schools, providing those transition plans and supporting kids in employment. So this concludes all the information on our performance report for the 23-24 school year. As you can see, we are looking at improvement for those post-secondary indicators and graduation rates, as well as looking at the suspension rates of students. Our goal is always for our students with disabilities to perform and exceed expectations, and we continue to grow by developing our staff through training and support in order to provide those positive outcomes. If you have any questions.
Indicator 14, can you give us some track record on that in terms of where we were last year or the years before? And because I know that with JARS and some of the post-graduation or the pre-graduation planning, that we've been making big pushes to try and improve these numbers. So is it successful?
Yes, so I actually do graph that every year. So I have a graph of where we are from each year. So I can either pull that out, or I'll be more than happy, I don't know how much time we have today, to send that information to you as well of where we were the year before and where we are now. I'm trying to remember.
Is it going up or is it plateaued or?
I think we're seeing some go up, and I'm trying to remember which one of these were going up, and then I think one dropped. I think 14A dropped, but I think 14B and C went up. But to tell you that, to make sure I'm giving you the right information.
Yeah, you can email those graphs to me, but.
Absolutely.
So you did
I
a
would
great.
imagine that number fluctuates with the cohort too.
It does.
Right.
It
Correct.
does.
You know,
And that's the hard part, and it's a moving
Statistics
target.
and-
Yeah. Any of the high school indicators, that's what makes it so difficult.
Yeah.
Is you might be talking about big group one year, big group next year, tiny group next. Not
Yeah.
like that, it's
So obviously, we don't have comparisons from the year before or other places, but what, in your estimation, is the area that you think that needs the most attention? And what plans do you have for that?
So my area that I feel is graduation rates. We would like to see students graduate with that standard diploma or advanced diploma. So that's one of the bigger, and when we see that happen, we'll see that dropout reduce, which is one of those goals. I also want to see those post-secondary outcomes that we were just talking about. That is one of the emphasis we've also been talking about and working with Ms. Rogers, who's a supervisor. We work with Trevor, who's part of Dr. Trosper's team as well with CTEs, getting them involved more in Susie Gibson programs and finding them jobs as well, so that we can see those positive outcomes, see them be able to be independent, sufficient adults that they're able to find jobs and move forward. So that is the area of focus. We are focusing with Mr. Tucker's team on the discipline alternatives to that behavior. How can we keep them in school so they can learn? Because we know kids have to be in school to be able to learn. So that was the other one of those that we were really looking at. I always want to improve our performance outcomes in their SOL scores. I always want to see our students progress in that general education curriculum, those SOLs. So if I would say my top three, that would be my top three. But all of these areas are areas we are always working on and making sure that we're seeing that improvement with our students.
So, what are you, I mean, obviously, there's areas, those are your top three areas. So in those top three areas, are there things that you need to change that might help with that? Or is there, I'm a big proponent of finding best practices wherever, like you're saying, people are calling you saying, how did you do this? This is great. So do you have resources that you're utilizing for that?
Yes, so last year, Ms. Rogers actually went to the State Transition Academy. She was accepted into that as a leader in transition, which is those post-secondary outcomes, which is those post-secondary thesis graduation. So she's been networking with other districts, seeing what's working for them, what's working for us. The other thing is she's working very closely, like I said, with Trevor, with the CTE and Susie G, trying to get our students doing more. We're also developing a class where kids can do internships through an independent, I don't want to call it independent study class, but it's kind of where we're working on those careers and we're working with them on those functional skills and finding jobs. So we're always moving toward that, and that's just some of the things that are in place. We also have a relationship with DARS as well as VCU Transition that we're working very closely with, that we're all working together to work on those students and work on those post-secondary outcomes. So you'll see changes coming through that. And we're all training our teachers in using all of the tools that are there. They're all research-based, evidence-based practices that we're using. SOLs, you know, I mean, we're doing Tier 1 instruction. We're working very closely with Dr. Trosper's team, observations, when we're looking at co-teaching, co-labs. How are we providing students all the Tier 1 instruction, and then what are we doing different for our students with disabilities? What is that specially designed instruction? We have a new state training that's come out for specially designed instruction that all our teachers are taking. Last year, high school teachers did it. This year, elementary teachers will be doing it. We've also been doing a lot of trainings with that across the board. So we're always, and then we're finding those intervention programs through the VLA. What are the interventions that are being recommended for our students? And what does that look like for them? And then we're assessing, looking, and then if that's not working, we assess again and move forward.
It always feels to me like we're, with the state targets, that we're trying to fit a whole lot of square pegs into a round hole. You know, because when you talk about the disability world, you're talking about some kids that are profound and some kids that are marginal, and yet they all end up with an IEP, and we put them all in this one lump and say, you need to meet this percentage. And for some of them, it's not possible, and for some of them, it's highly achievable. And then you see year to year these huge fluctuations, and met the goal, didn't meet the goal. So
Yeah.
tough job,
Yeah.
and all of the methods that you guys are doing are good. You know, you need all those tools in a toolbox to make something work.
Takes a team and a village.
Mhm.
As you can see, I talk about Mr.
Yeah,
Tucker
they have
and
to work
Dr.
together.
Trosper, because we all have to work together
Yeah.
to make it work. And like I said, our students with disabilities learn differently. It's not that they can't learn, they just learn differently, and we've got to find the right plan for them.
Yep.
And each one's different.
Absolutely.
So that's true. Kids that we call normal as well. Everybody learns differently. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Trosper, are you on for the VALS update?
I think I am, yeah. So you have a handout, a couple of charts that are printed out in color. So I'm just doing some preliminary SOL data. We don't have accreditation data yet. I'm thinking early to mid-September, but that's really outside our control. So I'm just kind of telling you what we're hearing. So we really would look forward to sharing with you what accreditation looks like, but this is just preliminary. But I'm going to start with VALS. And so VALS is our literacy screener that was given to students in grades K through 3. Now it has expanded, and this coming school year it's going to be given K through 8. So we're working on getting our 4th and 5th grade and then middle schools ready to be assessed on that. And that's going to be very different from middle school. They've never really done something like that. But VALS is the assessment that replaced PALS, which was our previous literacy screener. It's more rigorous, and I think some of the scores showed that. It's also kind of interesting as you look at it. It shows kind of where we started, and you know, in the fall, kind of is what it is, especially kindergarten, first grade. Those kids just come to us from wherever their home life is like, and then we try to work with them. And so what's really helpful to me is to compare the number of high risk, and then has that number dropped in the spring, and then the number of low risk, and has that number gotten higher. So what I wanted to do is look at the first chart. The title says 2025 VALS, Bedford County versus Virginia. So just this past week, we did see Virginia strands. And so as you can see, students, once they take the assessment, are categorized as high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. And so what I did was, on that chart, you can see at the top in the fall, it says that the percentage of students who are identified in Virginia as high risk in kindergarten, for example, is 35.9. And then in Bedford County, it was 35.19. So not a huge difference. And then as you kind of track down in the fall, you can see we're similar to the state. We're not quite as many high risk in 3rd grade, but when they start out, there's not a whole lot of difference. And then again, moderate and low risk. What I really look at again is the comparison. So I want to take you to the spring chart all the way under low risk. That's really what I'm looking at, because that shows the kids that have grown. One thing that we're really proud of is that at the end of the year in kindergarten, 54.85 students were in Bedford County were identified as low risk. So they almost doubled from the fall, which I think is really positive. Now, if you compare it to the state, we're about 5 points lower than Virginia, so they had a few more kids that were the higher number than in low risk. And then same with first grade. So what the chart shows me is that in kindergarten and first grade, we're not far behind the state, but we're a little bit behind the state in terms of getting the kids to low risk, which is where we want them to be. And again, a lot of what we deal with, especially in kindergarten, is that's how they come to us, and it takes some time. I think it's good evidence for a consistent implementation of a reading curriculum that's evidence-based. And so because this is the first year, it's kind of hard to show the results of that, but we're going to be going into year 3 of our reading curriculum. So we'll kind of see what that looks like. But what is good to see in the data, if you go to 2nd and 3rd grade, we actually outperformed the state. So we were in the number or the percentage of kids that are low risk, we were 6.73 points higher. And then in 3rd grade, we were 34.75. So our 3rd graders did an incredible job compared to the state. So that's something that we're really proud of. It's an interesting chart because we know we continue to need to focus kindergarten, first grade, and then 2nd and 3rd grade doing well, and let's keep improving. And one thing I'm not sure I said, if a student is identified as high risk, then that gets them extra reading intervention. So they work with either a reading specialist, and they get an individualized, like a student reading plan. So that could be our specialist, or somehow they have designed a plan to try to address those. So that's where we are with VALS right now. As usual, our Title I schools are the ones where we want to focus on. So we're even breaking it down more in my team. We're looking for what specific schools we need to go to, what grade levels. But from a division perspective, I think that's kind of a good big picture of where we are. So any questions about the VALS before I go on to the SOL?
I'm just making sure I'm understanding the chart. On the first section for the fall, I just noticed that 3rd grade high risk was 10 or negative 10.08.
Yes.
And then when they did the test in the spring, the high risk is negative 2.83.
Yes, that was
So-
the difference between the state and between Bedford County.
So does that, what does that mean? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying to
it is
understand
tough.
that.
So what you want from fall to spring is you want that number of high risk to drop. So you're looking at third grade, so in Bedford County, 26.62% of our students were identified as high risk. If you go down to third grade in the spring, 24.47 were identified as high risk. So they're going to be in one of those three bands. That number dropped a little bit, and it was 2.83 less than the state. So that's a good thing, that we're lower than the state in high risk.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
so as you go over that, you can
Okay.
see kind of how they moved to moderate risk. So the ones that didn't stay hopefully moved to moderate, and then an even larger percentage moved to low risk. So if you look at what the state did in third grade, only
Okay.
14% were low risk. And ours kind of went the other direction, which is, that's a real positive data point.
It was only a less than 2% change from the fall to the spring in that high-risk
Yeah.
group, though. That seems different than everything else. Everything else was,
Yeah, so what happened was, that tells me we had a group of kids, about a quarter of them are really tough to move forward. It looks like a lot of the moderate risk kids were able to move into low risk, which is what we want, but this coming year, we've got to get those kids as they go into fourth grade, we've got to get more moving into that moderate and hopefully the low risk. So that, I would have liked to have seen that number move a little more in third grade. Because that's a high number, a quarter of our kids, that's a high number of high risk.
yeah, and it just didn't change that much, right? And they're,
Right.
they're the kids
Yeah.
that are getting additional remedial help, and,
Mhm.
you know, why are they stuck in the mud?
Sure. And that could include special education, English language, low socioeconomic status. I mean, there's all kinds of factors that we play in.
But this is over all students, not just special needs children.
Yeah, that group includes, so it doesn't have to be that, but that's generally in that
So-
low group, that's who they are.
24% of our students in third grade are high risk at, I guess this is reading, is that correct?
Yeah, high risk to have reading difficulties or at risk to struggle. This doesn't necessarily mean they're at risk to not pass their SOLs, but essentially just says we've got to try to get them on grade level before they leave elementary school, and really before they leave 8th grade. If they don't get there by middle school, it's really tough to get them back, so.
So I'm going to ask you a really controversial question, because I like to do that.
You just can't help yourself. Okay.
My brother lives in Tucson, and he teaches year-round. They get 2
Okay.
weeks here, here off, but and they do it so that when they're coming in the fall, they're not lost so much. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I do know that over the summer, the reading loss is a big concern, especially in our Title I schools. So, I mean, the data shows when they go for an extended time without reading or getting that work at home, they do drop off. So we essentially have to work even harder to catch them up, as opposed to a school where they're reading every night with their families. So, yeah, and we do offer summer school programs. We do offer extended learning for kids with disabilities who qualify. And so for the ones that are in that, they were invited to summer school. Doesn't mean they all attended, but we try to mitigate that by doing pretty much most of June we had summer school. So it wasn't quite year round, but it was more than other kids got in school.
Yeah, I was going to say, if there's some kind of program to help those 24% through the summer, so that they can get ahead.
Sure.
I mean, kids need a break, and we don't want them to hate school, so there's a balance there, but, if they're in the 24% high risk, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, and we know that reading,
Try to
if
figure
they're
out
not-
a way to help them.
If they're not gonna read well, they're not gonna do much else well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind is this is the first year we've given this. It'll be really interesting as we kind of learn how to work with our kids. We're learning the science of reading. I mean, there's been a lot of changes with reading instruction in the last few years. I mean, even reading specialists will tell you the way they were trained to remediate students in reading is very different than what we're being trained now. So we're all kind of learning together. And I'm curious how next year will look as we start to compare.
Are we heading in the right direction or the wrong direction?
I think we are. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Right.
it's, what we're doing in Virginia, we've kind of modeled after other states that have seen great gains in reading. I mean, states that were historically very low, like Mississippi has turned into kind of a model for reading instruction, just based on the science of reading. So we're trying to mimic that in Virginia, and we're starting to see good results. I mean, there's a lot of good too, so, but obviously there's always work to be done.
Just my experience as a homeschool mom teaching my son to read, I had a curriculum that just did more sight words and he, at the end of second grade, he still couldn't read. And I'm like, forget this. And I went to phonics, and I just did a little bit within a little phonics book in the summer, and he was voraciously reading at like 5th or 6th grade level by the time September came around. It's just that the tools need to be right, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
And I want to make sure that we're doing phonics, we're doing, you know, proper learning for
And
reading.
Remember, the DOE has a list of approved curriculums that's been vetted very thoroughly
Good.
by experts in the field, and so we're only using those resources, and there's a lot more consistency in the division than there's ever been, so hoping that long-term that pays off.
And Dr. Strasser, that's what the VALS does. It breaks
Yes.
down if they are struggling with fluency or phonics or what it is.
Mm.
And that intervention actually marks what they're working, that's what they would work on. So that's what that VALS kind of breaks it all up into.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's good.
So you know what it is.
All right, so if there's no more questions about VALS, we'll move on to the next handout, which is division pass rate by test. So that is the preliminary SOL score. So, and again, we don't have accreditation data, but this kind of gives us an idea of what our pass rates were for each subject. And so what data is on there is our pass rate for the subject. Where it says 25 PR, that's percentile rankings. And remember, we have talked in the past about the CIP consortium. That is 72 school divisions, and so the data that we compare, that this data set compares to, 72 school divisions. There's actually 467 schools that we're compared to, and we try to look at how we rank compared to other schools and school divisions. And then I showed last year's pass percentage, and then compared to the percentile rankings. And then the final two charts just shows how our pass rate changed, whether it improved or did not, and the percentile rankings. And so as you look at that, I kind of broke it down by core subject area. So math is the first one, and algebra was a tough year for algebra. We had a lot of personnel challenges. We had teachers leave. Algebra, overall, the pass rate is pretty good. I mean, almost 80% is a pretty good pass rate. But in terms of percentile rankings, we dipped a little bit in Bedford County compared to last year. It was 38%.
That's a percentage compared to other counties?
Compared to the other 72
other
divisions in
72,
CIP.
okay.
Yeah. And that's one thing we found, especially with the new standards, it's actually more useful to look at percentile rankings, how we compare, because like as we've talked about with the new standards, we expect to drop a little bit with
Yeah.
math. But if we can kind of see how we're doing relative to others, that gives us a better indicator. With that being said, algebra, we have some work to do. But if you look at the other maths, grade 8 math improved, which was a positive. And then grade 3, 4, 6, and 7, those are not, I guess what I'll say is they did what was expected. They stepped back just a little bit. In terms of percentile rankings, we're still doing okay. Yellow being the middle third, green being the top third. So we're either in the middle or the top third in comparison to all those. But they have all dipped just a little bit, which is interesting because math the last 2 or 3 years has been the strongest subject in Bedford County. So, you know, as far as what we're doing about that, we've got the new reading or the math curriculum that we're really excited about. We've trained our teachers. We'll start rolling that out in the next few weeks. So I look for those to improve, but the new standards were really tough in math. They just were different. They were more rigorous. And I think we, not unexpectedly, but we did take a slight step back in math. But the good news is if you look at the other core areas, those have all done really well. So English, we actually improved our percentile rankings in high school writing, grade 3, grade 5, grade 7, and grade 8. Grade 5 through 8, that was all double-digit improvement in percentile rankings. So the reading scores in our second year of our reading curriculum had done really well. The only one that took a step back was grade 4 reading. So we've got to get in there and kind of figure out what happened there. It's still a relatively high percentile ranking, but they dropped by 3 points in terms of pass rate. So with new English standards to do that well, I'm really pleased with our schools for that. Science is the one I'm most excited about. If you remember the last few years, science scores have just been lagging behind. We just couldn't get them where we needed to go, and they took a really big leap forward. So biology actually improved their percentile rankings by 22 points, grade 5 science by 26, and grade 8 science, this is the first year we've given that. Last year we gave earth science, but we were in the 92nd percentile, and that's kind of gratifying because we changed our science sequence to get kids more prepared for 8th grade science. And this is the first group that's gone through that full sequence in middle school. So I am really, really pleased with science, and we're looking to continue to move forward in that. And then finally, social studies, civics improved. Virginia studies, that's a 4th grade U.S. or Virginia U.S. history. That stayed steady. And then world geography improved as well. So overall, last thing I'll say, if you look under the percentile rankings on grade 7 math, it shows we're in the 29th percentile. That's not unexpected. We always see Math 7 being lower because the advanced Math 7 take the Math 8 test. And so you have all of our advanced or high achieving students in 7th grade are taking the 8. So it's a smaller pool that have demonstrated lesser achievement in the past. Not that that's acceptable, but it's not unexpected. The other divisions don't do that, and that's why we rank low. And then with World History 1, that's a high school class. So if you have not passed your SOLs for that subject, that's when you take the SOLs in high school. So that's from a testing group of kids that already did not pass. They failed their SOL before. So again, it doesn't represent every kid. I don't look at high school as much in terms of pass rates just because it's not the same group of kids. But overall, for the most part, we've taken a step forward. We've got some clear areas to work on, but we're pleased with it and looking forward to seeing what accreditation ratings look like when they come out, hopefully mid-September. Any questions about that?
We're not, I think that at the school board meeting, they said something about the history book's not going to be changed next year.
Well, the state has to come out with a release list, and so we've not heard anything from them yet. The last we've heard is they're thinking maybe March is when they're going to have a released list. So that's going to be a really condensed timeline to try to do that. So we'll see what happens, but there's a chance we may have to wait till the next year just because we may not have the information we need. So that's our goal, but it's kind of out of our hands at this point.
So you're waiting on the state instead of, which we may have a totally different governor at that time.
Yes.
Ooh.
Hopefully that doesn't change that work, though. Hopefully.
Okay.
All right, do we have any old business? To discuss, Mr. Dupere, I sent you something that I had shared with you, Karen, earlier, and that was on the Respect Project.
Respect.
Mhm.
I think the SBMA just sent something about that too.
Yeah, they did.
Did you?
Yeah, I think that included kind of.
As a professional development program, it's been several months since I sent to you the original.
We
about
actually
that.
added it to our PD playlist for teachers, so on our PD days, we added that as an option for teachers to do and get PD points. So it's
Okay.
been on our playlist. It just took me a minute to remember. It's been on our offerings since you sent it to me and we looked at it.
Okay.
So we've been getting it out to teachers, so.
Because I know that they have a webinar that they're doing on the 19th, I think from 12 to 1, that, and I can't remember, Mr. Dupere, do you remember the, I think it is a training. Session.
August 19th webinar.
Right, from 12 to 1, I know, and I think it is the training that they go through. But I've done it, it's very informative. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that, if it's on their list, then Then that's good. That's, and I'll respond to Marty and let him know that that is, it has been implemented.
There was also an old business from the previous one about the math fee, and you were going to mention it to the principals at the administrator conference. Did that happen, or did you have that yet?
I wasn't in the math session, so I'm not sure, but I'll follow up at our next principals meeting. We've had multiple sessions and people leading them.
And Mr. Mayo has implemented it, and he said it's been very successful, and so I guess he can probably spearhead that if somebody else was interested, kind of showing them what they did. I don't even know what they did, and I haven't been to their B, but had a little bit going on, but
See what they do.
And then, Dr. Trosper, I wanted to follow up on the email that I sent you about the family life curriculum and how the current curriculum addresses pornography versus leaving it to a 10th grade curriculum, which is too little too late.
Yeah, yeah. So I've started to look back at some of the early standards just to see where we could fit it in. So that's kind of my plan, is to look at that next week and try to add that to the guide. One of the ones I looked at was like the role of media. I think we could put it in something like that. There's one on sexual exploitation. I think we could probably do that. So what we can do is try to highlight those discussions and the standards that are already there. So I haven't looked in depth, but I will look into it.
Okay, because I feel like that's pretty important in terms of how that particular aspect of family life undermines and destroys families. And if we're not addressing that, then we're falling short of our mandate.
Sure.
well, and that was mentioned, I mentioned that during our school board meeting as well, to make sure that we have that in our lower grades, something about cybersecurity and.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was, when I looked through the curriculum, there is something in every grade level from 4th on up that addresses sexuality in the media. And it seems like a perfect
Yeah.
place to insert that and just be more specific.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of our thinking too. So I'll get those in the guides too.
Great. I know that it was presented to the board at the last board meeting. So any changes that we make to it then need to be emailed for review, or how does that happen?
I think we'd probably do like a
That it becomes
board
an action
memo.
item at the next
Yeah.
board meeting?
We can probably do, what we'd probably do is a Wednesday memo with any changes made, just to inform the board, and then put the new updated guides in for action.
Okay.
So, unless you want us to bring it back again for info with an explanation and then action the following month.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I'd rather-
typically we
I'd
just
rather
do it in a
the
Wednesday memo.
Yeah.
Whatever is gonna keep us on the same time
Yeah.
frame, because if we further delay it, then it's
Yeah.
not gonna be implemented.
So we'll get Dr. Trosper just to make a, like, what changed, and then we'll add that also to the board, the actual board agenda, where we put a list of changes. We'll put that in there with the new updated guides, so.
Okay.
As far as the library books and stuff, what's the status on that, Mr. Dupere?
I went through and we studied and looked at the libraries where I could go to, was it Diversity? What's the name of it?
Destiny.
Destiny, on almost all of them, I took, as I said the other night, list of books that were in Montgomery County Supreme Court. Most of those do not show up in any of our libraries. There was a handful of them. Some of them were on witchcraft, one was on murder, death, and several were on stories where, it's a child's book, and he went, like a kid went on vacation and met a gay friend, or met somebody at a location. So it really wasn't into any advocation for. Most of those books did not exist in our libraries, almost all of them. But there were a few that did in high school, middle school, but very, very little in elementary. To the point of, I think it was more of a witchcraft type of thing in elementary, which I guess falls into the categories of, some of the popular books that we've had in the recent years. I can't even think of the name of them now, but.
The Harry Potter books?
Yeah, like a Harry Potter type of thing or something. But, and then I went and met with 2 librarians at Liberty, and one in the communications department of the library, and one that does the children's library, which supplements the education department. And she told me how they get their books, how they procure them, what process they go through. There is no association that's outside of the 2 that already exist and kind of coexist. I think it's the ALA and AASL or something like that. They don't exist. They just have to use discretion as to how they apply them. But she did give us a list of links that could be used by librarians or parents. Some of them already exist on the bottom of our library pages in Destiny, where a parent can go in and put in a title, search a profile of that book, kind of a synopsis. So some of the links they use we already use. She said, "Welcome to our world. We have to be very discretionary." That she's got a discretion as to what we allow and don't allow. It's a concern for everybody, but I think we've done a pretty good job, and I think we can go back to looking at what was done maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and the process put in place to remove them if they are in a situation where a parent wants to dispute them. There's a lot of those policies in place already. I think that's to our benefit. I don't think that most of the counties around us have those policies the same way we do. So I think we're ahead of most of our counterparts. So she went through and kind of backed me up and did the same study just to make sure I was looking at the right things, and she came up with almost identical results with Dr. Woodford did. So I feel pretty good about what's happening in our libraries. We just have to make sure that, and I think this discussion is going to go through the principles to make sure that you scrutinize what's being ordered in your school.
So what about parity?
Say that again.
Parity?
I took all of the terms that you put in there, and I literally spent a day just looking under those comparison terms. And you can find a lot of books, for instance, in faith. There were books like the Berenstain Bears that had faith integrated into them, because they were speaking about the golden rule. So they're already they do exist to some extent. Obviously, if your librarians are more conscious of that, you could increase that over time just by new purchases, but it does already exist. I put in creation and evolution separately. And I think I said the other night, I found evolution to go in many different directions. Mostly it went into the directions of evolution of the American flag, the evolution of the Civil War, the evolution
Of things besides creation.
creation. But there were a whole set of books, Bibles, to be more specific, that identify Genesis 3 as the discussion or story of creation. So that parity does exist. I took all of those terms and literally put them all in, and I did not. There were a lot of terms that did not even show up. I wish I brought that up. Maybe I did. A lot of the terms didn't even show up when we went.
Is there
What do you
an-
mean, terms that didn't show up?
That you used, like, when you use the contrasting terms in your email, I put one against the other. And in a lot of those, they didn't,
They
the
just weren't
contractor didn't
recognized.
show up. In other words, there might be something there on, let's say, evolution or something else other than evolution, but there might be a creation version of that. So,
What about the LGBTQ books that promote homosexuality?
I did not find much of that at all. I mean, it is minuscule.
Okay.
So,
But do we have anything that shows the kids how dangerous all that stuff is, or how?
I don't think danger, but there is a whole series of books on what proper families should look like.
Because a lot
Such
of.
as books on what it means to be a dad, a mom, a grandparent, a parent, an uncle, an aunt. I mean, it goes through structurally what a family should look like. That was a whole series, topical series on families. And there were, in those series, there was like 10 books that a kid could check out. This is what a family looks like. I did not find the contrast of that.
So I had gone to, we had town hall in Stanton River, and there was a big display of, you know, so you think you're gay, or, you know, there was a whole display of
I
several
didn't really
books.
see any of that.
Now, this was back when we had the town halls, before you were hired, and that was a big display. I can't imagine, and I didn't go searching, but I can't imagine that I'd see any other books that say, you know, if you're considering this, you know, you need to maybe consider all the ramifications, because we do know that the LGBTQ community, usually those kids are needing psychological help, and they're vulnerable, and many of them end up getting trafficked. So we just have to be, I just want to make sure that kids realize some of that stuff.
I didn't see a lot of books. Let's take another topic, for instance, climate change and climate cycles, I think that's the term she used.
Well, yeah.
And there were books on climate change because it gets a chapter here and a chapter here and a chapter there. But there were, in one particular elementary, there were 15 books on weather conditions or cycles of weather. All of those were literally not, they were all what proper science says about, you know, tornadoes, hurricanes, I didn't write them all down, but it was literally what is rain, what is this, what is winter, what is summer.
Well, yeah, but
Those
doesn't,
books all exist, so none of them necessarily refer to climate change.
I mean, I guess cycle would be like sometimes we have warmer years and other years are colder, whatever. That's a cycle that our Earth goes through.
Well,
That's
there was
I
a whole,
meant by
what I'm saying is there
cycle.
was a whole series of books on weather, just weather, not necessarily negative look or climate change look. It was just literally, this is what weather is. And I think that's a positive take on what we're seeing.
So in regards to the whole parity topic, we have a mechanism in place to remove books that are controversial, right? For them to be reviewed and removed if they're found to be, they warrant removal. Is there a mechanism in place for students to request books?
So our librarians usually get suggestions. If students come to them looking for a particular series or something, they kind of keep up with new books that are out, Caldecott winners and Newbery Award winners. And they also ask teachers, are there certain things that curriculum-wise you're teaching that I can get some support materials for? So our librarians do that, and they try really hard to get things that the school community is interested in. We have had parents who have donated books, and the librarians go through them, make sure they're appropriate, and, make sure that that is something that would be okay in their library. But parents could make suggestions too. I'm sure some parents do. And ultimately, we kind of leave it up to the librarian, and then they put their orders in, and the principals check them. I can't say that principals look up I mean, typically, it's thousands of dollars worth of books when they do it. They have huge.
Books are cheap.
Yeah, and so for a principal to look at every one, so that's why we trust our trained library media specialists. They're trained to do that. As Mr. Dupere said, we added a couple of years ago so that parents, because we added that option for parents to get that email saying, this is what your child checked out. So we added, these are places you can go and get a synopsis of that book. Here's how you know what that book is about. As far as specifically going in and saying, this is a topic that, you know, we want to have parity with, I don't know that we've done that. Like if you put a display up here, we want a display here. We've never told our librarians what to display.
I was looking more at what already existed. So
Right.
if I went to this topic and went to this topic, what did I see in volume? One of the things that I mentioned to Dr. Woodward, and I think she already mentioned it to Dr. Trosper, is that you can go on to some of these web pages and they are so well structured, like library page of a school is so well structured. I mean, you go to another, you gotta literally put in questions to get through. So I think one of the goals that I came out of this is to take these principles with really good top-notch formats, so to speak. And then on some of them, there is a place for a parent to make a suggestion. Like they didn't find this book and they can put it in and then the library can see that. So some of it exists and some of it did not. So I think my goal here is if we can find those really good schools that have a really good page, let's duplicate that across the board. I found that to be probably about 50% of our elementaries did a pretty decent page, and the other 50 were somewhere between. It was difficult to get in or I had to spend time. And really, when you go in and you pull down About Us, you find the library. And you ought to be able to open the page and see instantly that you have this system in place. And in some of them, when you pull it up, it literally starts listing books by content. Like it'll say, these are athletic books, these are mysteries, these are, it'll go right down and clump them all together.
Yeah,
So
you
that's probably what we should look at, is how is Destiny
Well,
used, how is it?
And I could say, so for elementary librarians, they teach.
Yeah.
So they don't just have kids come into the library whenever. They actually teach lessons, they teach creative writing, they read to kids. It's actually one of our teachers' planning periods, because that's the only way we can do it at the elementary level. So those librarians work the same number of days as teachers, and but middle school and high school, they don't teach, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't teach. And they also, our high school librarians are 12 months. So they have the whole summer to work on websites and things like that. And they don't teach kids. Not that that's a good or bad thing. They help kids
But it's
with
not a time
research. And so I
It's
just,
more
in
of a web
defense of our
masturbation.
elementary librarians, I think they have a lot on their plate, and websites are, I think there's more in-depth websites at the high school, probably because there's more time to create that. And also, one of our middle school libraries has an aide, a full-time library aide to help. So, our elementary librarians are checking out books, checking them back in, teaching lessons, creating lesson plans. So I'm an elementary
It's probably
person at
more-
heart.
it's
If I have
probably
to
more
defend
of a-
my,
Whoever creates your web pages needs to go in there and say, call it, if it's not the library, it's something. I'm not sure who does
it's
that.
always somebody extra.
Yeah.
It's an extra for somebody. If nobody's assigned to it, just like here at the school board office, we all try to do our own pages. And then last year we got an OCR complaint. We had to pull a lot of stuff off our website to go back into compliance. And so low key.
So the public libraries have where you can go to one library, look for a book, and it'll tell you what other libraries locally might have that book. We don't have anything like that in.
We do.
Do we?
Mary
We
does
do?
that.
Yeah, the librarians can search, there's an option to search across district, and it
Good,
will
okay.
show what books are in other schools.
Good.
I know like public libraries will use that and they will transfer books from one to the other. We don't really have a mechanism for that to transport books from one library to another. I think there are a few librarians that have done that have, borrowed books from one school, but we don't have anything internal because most of those have like a library courier that drives them.
Right, yeah, we'd have to have a whole system.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's even the utility of being able to search Campbell County's libraries if we can't access the books?
Now we can search our schools internally. We
Just
can't search
internally.
outside of.
In Bedford only
Yeah.
is what we
Okay.
can search.
But you can't like go to Forest Middle and pick out a book and then turn it into JF. You have to turn it back into
Right,
Forest Middle.
but the librarians can see what books are in other.
And we have a courier system if we wanted. I mean, we could check something out, put it in a courier to travel.
And I think they
from
have
school.
done
And I
that.
think they have if there's research topics. And you can get so much now on the internet. I'm not sure how much. There are a lot of online resources for kids too, like online encyclopedias and that stay up to date, not like the old-fashioned.
Mr. DePere, you had also, I've sent several different to Dr. Tosper and to you of different books, series that I've seen that were really good series from what I've seen. What's the status on any of
I
that?
went through all of those myself, and I think those fall into that category of principals just being there wasn't anything that stood out to say we can't do this or this, or I live in the research library.
So are you letting principals know about
Well, we have-
them or librarians?
Really, we wanted to have that discussion when school started, and start moving in directions like that.
You're going, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm
you.
sorry, I'm still having a hard time hearing, so I'm not talking loud enough probably. Yeah, that's something that we can do.
You're going to have that discussion with the
Yeah.
principals about some of
Well,
those
the
other
same
books?
way that we'll say, you have these resources out there, you can, here they are. We haven't done that yet either. We haven't passed on to the librarians or principals all of the links because I only got those a week and a half ago. So we kind of wanted to finish the whole project of putting everything together. We
I
would
see.
say it at a meeting, either a principal meeting or through an email.
We have
to say,
library meetings too.
These links are available, you can use them. These books are suggested.
And you did contact the librarians at LU, did you, how was that? How
I
did that
spent a
go?
morning with two of them, and as I was saying before, basically, they don't have any advantage over what we do. They deal with the same issue.
Oh, okay.
There is, like I said before, there is no other option for a library association than the two that exist. They're national. So she said, if you're coming to me to look for an alternative, I don't have one. We do this, we scrutinize the same thing that you have to scrutinize in a public ed school.
I'm just concerned some of those associations don't even look at some of the books that are out there.
Yeah.
like-
It was interesting that she said, welcome to my world, basically. So it's not like there's anything alternative out there. You have to be very scrutinizing of what you do. You know, I'm dying to say this because I was, not to be funny or anything, but I found 120 variations of Cinderella.
Yeah, it's
Unbelievable.
Three Little Pigs, try that one too.
I did that one, I did them all. There are so many
And you can't even
variations.
find the classic, just the classic
No,
one.
I found them,
Hardly.
I found them mixed in.
Here in our school?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Because I tried to find them in the public.
No, I
I
went
had to go to
through-
Campbell County to find them. They didn't
I
have
took
them.
all of the topics. Snow White, Jack and Beanstalk, Goldilocks, the Three Bears, Little Red Riding Hood, the Three Pigs, Hansel and Gretel. This one came up, Moldy Locks and the Three Beards. It's a humorous take on it.
Oh, my God.
No doubt.
Fairy tales in general, 141 books on it, and a high level of them, the I would say 1950s version, so to speak. Beauty and the Beast, all of it. I did not find them all, but I probably found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 topics or stories, and in many cases, like Cinderella, in every version of every country in the world, just about, and yeah.
So we do have that
Perspective
in
of the
our-
mouse, the perspective of the mouse who turned into a horse, the perspective of
That's funny.
the stepmother, who, wait a minute, this is not all that bad, I'm not that bad, that type of thing. So they're all out there, and many of them with the humorous things too, just a different perspective on the story. But I didn't find a lot of negative.
I have to say that when I was reading at Bedford Elementary, I think it's Bedford Elementary, or primary, Bedford Primary, I think it was. I tried to find classics to come read to the kids, and I had a hard time in the public schools finding any, but when I mentioned them to the kids, a lot of them had heard of those. They'd already heard those stories, so that was encouraging to me.
Well, for instance, Sleeping Beauty, there was 16. One of them was considered the other story of all the fairy tales. For instance, Sleeping Beauty was not all that great because she snored. They went into a whole thing of snorting. And then another one, Rumpelstiltskin, it just went on and on. It was comical reading some of those synopsis. So there is a lot of perspective out there. And what do we use perspective for? You have to ask yourself, what do we use it for? And you use it for so that you don't just get one perspective in your life. I mean, I like humor. I enjoy looking at some of these because I've never seen that perspective before. And that might be something I go read to my grandchildren, because I have supper dinner in about an hour, and they make me read to them every Tuesday night. And I'm not getting out of the house until I have 4 or 5 kids sitting on my lap reading. So, it's just, I mean, it was a day long, probably a day and a half, and I was pleasantly surprised at what we have. We don't have a lot of negative stuff on
That's good.
I would-
Thank you.
I would like to
Add to that, our libraries can be searched through our Destiny site publicly.
How do I get that?
I can give you the address. It's actually bedfordva.follettdestiny.com.
and then you can choose a school and you can search the library books in that school.
Can you email that to
Yeah,
us,
can you email
please? That would be helpful. So, and then I think too, if we want to build a positive supply to our libraries too, parents need to know that they can request books on more conservative topics or a counter view to something that they find in the library.
I think that's, the communication to our parents is important for some of that. I think that's a good point. And we don't want to just bombard them with all kinds of emails because then they stop reading, but.
We could add it to our next newsletter from the superintendent. We do a parent newsletter from the superintendent every quarter, kind of updates of things you need to know, where you can find stuff. We could add it to that. A lot of parents look at that.
That would be good.
I
Do you
did,
remember that?
for instance, I did politics, and I got
He did not
nothing,
write that down.
nothing on political activists, one particular school, nothing on political activists, nothing on political campaigns, and nothing on politics.
Nothing at all, politics and the whole thing?
Not from the standpoint of partisan or anything like that, nothing. I mean, it's just kids' books, so.
We were focused a little bit more on elementary.
I think you.
When we were trying to.
Yeah, most of our research is in elementary. That's where the most inspiration is, and they're not necessarily using their books for research.
So you haven't really researched the middle and high schools?
I did, but not as deep as I did elementary, because elementary was my biggest concern first. I think that's where you and I have been having most of our conversation, was in the elementary. Now, I did go into middle school and high school, but then a few topics showed up, but very few.
Some of the books that I sent you were elementary, I guess. Yeah, some of them were middle school. I
Yeah.
think.
One of the old topic things that I wanted to bring up too, as we're starting into a new school year, was we have consistently identified the academic success of our kids linked to the parental involvement. And as we talked about elementary schools and how to get parents involved, it was whenever they gather together to a kid's play or a performance or something, that the parents are all there because they want to see little Jimmy and Susie recite whatever they have been learning in school and sing their songs, and those things are great, but they're also a captive audience. And in terms of educating them on the statistics of cell phone use at home, right? The fact that while they're sleeping, their kids are surfing the web and TikToking and whatnot from 11 a.m. to 6, or 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. and wrecking their school day. And just taking those educational moments where we have parents as a captive audience for us to develop some sort of a curriculum presentation, like, I don't know, top 10 statistics that the parents need to know that they probably don't, that are destroying their kids. And over the course of the year, maybe present 2 of them at each of the performances or something. We need to have a strategy to
Well, that's
do
excellent.
parent education when we have them as a captive audience.
Well, and also like the signs for mental health issues. A lot of parents don't really, and where to go and what to do. Yeah, that's an excellent.
Um,
idea.
I got a fact sheet from a Bedford organization that you guys probably know, Be Anxious for Nothing. And it's just a little fact sheet that comes with their October run, and it hits just some of the startling statistics related to these things. And it doesn't take but a second to look at it. We could even print a flyer like that to hand out to the parents. You know, 3/4 of them end up in the trash, but the ones that read them, you know, read those bullet points, which are super easy, may just get their wheels turning.
Another idea too, and this has been tossed around, I think, with other school board members, just in other conversations. I don't know if it ever went with a full board meeting discussion, but we were talking about the financial, how can we save in different ways, and how can we get grandma and grandpa to come, you know, sit with the kids in the back of the room, just a little extra help. We would have to vet them or whatever. But a lot of them would volunteer. They would absolutely love to do that. Some, you know, grandparents to be able to sit in their kids' classroom maybe twice a year, you know. And we could rotate some different people out, especially with teachers who maybe need a little bit of extra eyes and hands or whatever. Utilize grandparents or parents, you know, that can help with class management or whatever, where we wouldn't necessarily pay them for that, but we just have more eyes and ears and so on. I don't know if is that something that's reasonable? Is that already been
Well, we do that
pursued?
with
Is that-
dads, right? The dads program, I think in London does a good job with that. Where dads come in and.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Watchdogs.
they're watchdogs.
Watchdogs.
That's
Is it
what
called?
it is.
Do we
Yeah.
have that already?
Yeah.
We have it at several schools.
I got pictures. I've done
Sean's a
it.
watchdog.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but the kids love it.
Oh, yeah.
But the grandparents may be more available than than moms and dads because of their jobs, but.
And some may not have grandkids in the school system either, but I don't know how we get a hold of them, but, I mean, you can even ask the parents to come in. Do you have a neighbor who kind of has adopted your kids who might, you know, who might be interested in coming and whatever? I mean, I know when I lived in Oregon, I didn't have any family near me, and we kind of had adopted grandparents, you know, for my kids, and they would have probably loved to do something like that.
I think a lot of these strategies would be good. We're really working on our strategic plan, and there's a whole section on family and community engagement. And so a lot of these ideas we could probably put in as strategies and actions that we could kind of work on. So I know we've talked about our volunteer programs and beefing those up and how do we support schools, so. Add that to our resolution.
Thank you.
When does that strategic planning happen?
So we are going to bring to the board at the September meeting, we want to add a fifth goal to our goals.
Our falling goals.
Yes, our falling goals. I think we realized it early on, but we don't really have a goal for our capital improvement plans, which are really, really important, keeping our schools upgraded and all of that. So Randy's team is gonna, if the board approves the addition of that goal, and we want to change goal 4 to be more about family and community engagement, not just about community partnerships, but really engaging our families. So we're going to bring that in September, and if the board approves that, then our teams will start meeting to update our strategic plan. And then our plan is then to report on those goals and the strategies. And so every month, we will bring something from the strategic plan to the board to share and update the board on. So we'll probably start, depending on how quick Randy's team can go. We kind of said, we'll kind of try to match it to topics. So for SOLs, we could talk about goal 1, academic achievement, but I don't know that we'll ever have accreditation in. So with our new goal, I know Randy has a lot that he wants to put in there, and then we could, in kind of beefing up our family and community 1, we'll probably bring those back to the board pretty quick. So our teams work on them constantly, but it's like a 30-page document, so we give it to you in snippets so that it's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, Mr. DePere gave me a copy of it.
Yeah.
And I brought that up at 2 of the last 3 board meetings that we were going to do this. So, like she said, we'll probably start in September, take a goal, take a strategy, discuss what we're doing.
I've got the new graphic for adding goal 5, so we'll present that to get the board to approve. The goals we can't change without board approval, so. And that probably will take an information action, but that doesn't mean if we feel like the board is supportive, I mean, the strategies and actions we put in can fit in multiple categories. So we'll be working on it way before.
I was going to say things like this where we, do some parent education at a community meeting. Shouldn't take board approval, and maybe a consensus opinion or.
Well, and things like that, so the individual strategies and actions, they wouldn't need board approval. It's just the big goals before we change any goals and add any strategies underneath it. But what is nice about the strategic framework is that as you're suggesting those things, each of us kind of own a goal. So when you're suggesting things, we as a team can kind of vet that and say, well, how can we put that in? How can we put that in as part of our action, or how do we disseminate that information? So the individual pieces, the suggestions you're making, we would just put those in as things we could work on. And then as we're presenting, the board can also just offer any suggestions. And we're also going to try to tie it a little bit to our committee meetings. So our high academic achievements and, our discipline and our which we have most of, we have a lot of goals. So we'll kind of vet those through CBO as we're going to, as we're working on them and adding to them and updating.
Just a question about the grandparents coming, and I'm just thinking about how to sell it. But I really loved coming and reading to the kids. And I know that reading to the kids helps make them want to read. I mean, that's a really important part of their development for reading. So could that even be, something that, I know there's a lot to cover. I mean, I taught elementary, and I taught all the subjects, all in the same, there's a lot to cover, you just kind of have to keep moving, but is there a space for that? Is there space in the curriculum where the teacher would normally be reading them a book? And then they just have the grandparents do it instead or something?
I don't know if there's space in the curriculum, but I think it would be, it's good to, for instance, like the nutrition groups, they do Grandparents' Day, where they invite all the grandparents, kids to come in and eat with your grandchildren, or your adopted grandparents, bring your adopted grandparents. And some of our kids don't have grandparents, so bring your mom or your dad. And so we could, on occasions like that, say, if you want to stay and read, or, we could kind of tag on those kinds of things. And honestly, probably schools are doing so much more. Like each school has their own individual school improvement plan, and I'm amazed at the things that they do. So they're probably doing a lot of these things, and that's probably what we'll find out as we start talking to them. Like, they have great ideas, and they do collaborate together in principal meetings and share those ideas, and they'll take from, so.
We used to have each school present in the board meetings, and those took a long time, and I'm assuming that Mr. Hill suggested to X that because he likes to get in, get out. But some of those wonderful ideas were there. I'd love to just somehow be able to bottle them up, but share them with other schools to do stuff like that. Is that even a possibility?
It is so we meet with our principals every month. And so typically we try to put some collaboration time in so that they can share ideas about things they're doing. And sometimes we try to be really intentional about the topic. We can always do that. We meet with them monthly. It's already scheduled out, and we can get them collaboration time. And one of the big things that we can talk about are volunteer programs. I know we hit on it a little bit last year, but we're getting towards the end of the year, and they were tired and trying to finish things up. So, we can always talk to us about how you get volunteers in, how do you get family members in. So we can do an intentional collaboration.
Very good. Anything else?
Good ideas, good conversations, good work.
A lot of stuff to throw out.
No, next time I'll bring a notebook. One piece.
Right.
Thank
So
you
what
for
will
your
you-
work on the libraries and
It was interesting.
being diligent
What
about
will you
that.
read to your grandkids tonight?
Whenever they bring me.
What they bring you?
They have a library in Dad's office, several hundred books. And my wife brought all of her books when our boys were little and gave it to me. And we have one in our house.
I'm envisioning a Princess Bride moment. Grandfather comes and reads to,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I have to change the stories just to be humorous. They go, Grandpa, that's not the right story.
I used to make up stories for my kids.
They know it.
My daughter would say, tell me a story, and I'd just make one up. Of course, she was always in it,
all right, shall we adjourn?
We are adjourned.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.